Now is the time.
Now is the best time.
The topic for our top 5 this week is the following. Our top 5 favorite personal Disney pictures. And your number 5 was this one.
Okay, so this was taken
we
in
were
New
here
Orleans.
for that, weren't we?
You were. Yeah, it was New
Yes.
Orleans Square in Disneyland. And I like this one because it's one of the few pictures. Actually, it's not. I take a lot of pictures like looking up, but this one, it was just so well framed. The sky was so well framed, and I like it. I like to think of it as this reminder of the importance to look up, and whenever you're in the Disney space, because there's so much detail that's being missed if you don't.
I love this picture. I took from one of the cavalcades, and you can see the castle with the new colors in the background. And I really appreciate taking pictures of the cast members, and particularly these days, and that able to see them back in the parks and able to see them enjoying playing. And I love this picture. Collin, let's go to your number 5.
So my first one was actually from 3 weeks ago, and I was actually staying at the beach club of the Yacht and Beach Club, and I was walking back from Epcot, and it had rained not too much earlier in the day, probably within an hour. So there were big kind of dark clouds that were kind of shifting through the sunset, and the sunset I didn't expect there to be much of one because the clouds were so low, but for about 4 minutes, this scene kind of opened up as we were walking back from Epcot, and I had just paused for a minute and grab a few photos of it, but it ended up being a layered photo, so it ended up with a lot of color in it, and something kind of unique because the kind of framed up the clouds really nicely, and I have an affinity for this area. You'll probably see a trend on this list, but something about sunset.
Jason, your turn.
All
You're
right.
number 4.
Number four is next to the. And I was saying last night that in World Showcase, the France Pavilion may be my favorite to walk at night, and it's hard to decide between that and the Canada Pavilion and Morocco, but definitely
it's an
those
amazing
three.
area at night.
But after it's rained, and I'm particularly fond of this photo because of 3 things. Number 1, it's the France Pavilion at night, so there you go. Number 2, I had just come out of seeing Impressions of France, of course. And number 3, it had rained, and so I thought to myself, you know who would be proud of me if I took a picture right now of the...
It's true.
Collin Kendall.
And if I remember correctly, you sent me a photo from this area that same night.
I did. I said, I'm channeling
I'm
channeling my inner Collin Kendall is what I said. Yeah.
They make fun of me because I chase puddles, but we'll get to that.
It's such a beautiful pavilion.
So let me go to my number 4. That is, and actually,
This almost made my list.
I took this picture, and actually, Collin was next to me.
Literally within feet.
Yes.
I'm glad I didn't put this on my list, but I'm glad it made your list.
And I loved, the whole scene of the Pixar Pier and this, because and actually I was trying to find. I had one picture like this for the sunset also, and it's beautiful. But I love this picture, but the way that you have every color and lights being reflected in the lake. It is great, and one thing I really miss that place is
Me too.
and it's something that start to grow on me, because the first time I went to DCA, I was not so a huge fan of it, but it started to become better and better and grow, and I love.
All right. So mine is actually the Radiator Springs Canyon. We're sticking to DCA, and this area is just mind-blowing in person, and pictures really don't do it any justice because the depth of it is unbelievable. And there's just little alcove area as you transition between lands. It's just kind of this open door that you walk through, and something about it, you don't, like when you walk into the park, you know it's not that big of an area, but once you get there and you get in certain areas, it really gets to be an all-encompassing experience, and the rock work just tends to grow from different places. You get it in different viewing angles, and if you're outside the park, it's literally just a little corner of the park when you see it from behind. But they've done such a perfect job with a forced perspective that this is one of my favorite views, especially in that park.
It is Jason's number 3. Let me see. Yes.
I did not post this just because it's the Mexico Pavilion. The irony is not lost on me. But what I love about this, and this was taken the night that Collin and I had dinner at the Mexico Pavilion.
It is.
What I love about this is the Norman Rockwell style photo, the shot. I mean, it feels like there's a family there. The colors
you're right.
are just magnificent.
A lot of depth.
There's so much going on. It almost looks like it's a painting of some sort, right? But that's
or like a real scene that's not in an amusement park, like
right. It's the Mexico Pavilion. It's so magical. And guys, we've got to go back to San Angel Inn. I don't care what you say. We're gonna have this experience.
Oh, you know, my first reaction when I saw the picture was that I was about to say, but Jason, it needs to be a personal picture, because you know what it looks like it's not, I would not say it in the bad way, staged, but those pictures that they use for a catalog or for a...
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
No,
looks like something Disney throw on their website to like promote the restaurant.
Yes,
perfect. Collin is here to tell you, like, it was not staged at all.
No,
It's perfect.
I don't even think I realized that you took this.
Let me go to my number 3. I just did a little preview, but actually the photo is beautiful and it's amazing. But this history behind that is really important. And people was ask me, but is there anything to do with Disney? Yes, that was from Disney Magic, from the Disney Cruise Line the Magic. Guess what time was it? It was 11:45 p.m. We were cruising the Scandinavian seas, and that's
when July, June or July?
June. Yeah. So you definitely
It's a long sunset.
Yeah, it's a long sun, and it stayed like that for a while. So it was beautiful, and the whole trip was really good. Was perfect. If you excuse myself, I need to bring an honorable mention.
Oh, come on now.
Yes.
We know what's coming.
Yes, and the honorable mention is also from that trip.
It's another sunset.
No.
See, now you're stretching it, buddy.
No, that's that. No, it's not stretching. That
I know it's a cruise ship.
That's
it's
one
the
heck
Disney...
of a view, though.
Gorgeous view.
No, so that's Geiranger and in the Norwegian fjords, and that tiny little boat there is Disney Magic, and it is an amazing trip. So if I don't know how are the dates for, because usually they have only few dates for that Scandinavian trip.
Well, I want to go there.
That is, I'll recommend to everybody. The one, it departs from Copenhagen, Denmark, so you can arrive in Copenhagen a few days before and enjoy Copenhagen. That is beautiful.
Tivoli Garden.
Go to the Tivoli Park, yes, and it's beautiful, perfect. Then you had the 7 days, the 7-night journey throughout the Norwegian fjords, and you go back and you arrive back in Copenhagen too. It's so beautiful. Buddy Collin, you're number 3.
This one is honestly one of my favorite photos because it was one of the very first photos I took when I got into Disney photography. Because before this, I wasn't a big photography fan, and I figured that if I wanted to learn, now was the time to learn if I was going to. And this was about, now I guess it's been almost 3 years ago. And it was a kit lens. It was a very basic camera, Nikon D3400, basic DSLR that basically anybody can afford. Slapped it on a cheap tripod, and this was the result. It's one of those photos that I always go back to, and I try to buy new gear, and it's like I can do a lot with a little amount of thing, and anybody can. So it's one of my favorites. It frames up really nicely every time you go by, and every time I go past this spot, I have to take a photo now. And I've never beat this one, but I do have a 2-part story.
Yes.
To this one.
So brings me this.
The honorable mention. The first of probably many.
So let me get back to there and show you the other photo.
Yeah, so this is the second one, and I put this on here because it's a photo I've shared quite a few times, so I didn't want it to be like the main photo, but I've never been able to replicate it quite exactly. Because if you look at the lighthouse on this one, the light is actually pointed directly at you, so it creates a star pattern. With long exposure photography, because this is probably 15 to 16 second exposure time on the camera, it's very difficult to kind of line it up or to get it in the perfect spot where it hits the lens right to have that it's right at you. So normally you have like a weird beam off to the right or a weird beam off to the left. It's the only time I've ever been able to line everything up. So I had to put that one on here.
So number 2, Jason.
Number 2.
Wow.
This is so Laura Sneed, who's in our group here tonight. This is her favorite. This is her favorite photo that I've taken, which, you know, for what it's worth.
I think this is her favorite photo, period.
But
based
this
on
is
the story that I've heard.
this was just one of those, again, off my iPhone. I just finished a conference call from this one of my, which is one of my favorite
it's a
spots
hard
to
life,
sit,
isn't it, Jason?
and relax. It can be at times, because it can. But at this moment, it wasn't. And I was sitting there behind Mr. Kamal's shop, store, kiosk, whatever that is there that's closed right now. And the sun was setting. The bird was there. It was just gorgeous. Too pretty to pass up taking a picture, that's for sure.
So let's go to my number 2, and this is also Animal Kingdom.
Animal
Though.
Kingdom,
So
yeah.
we're not leaving the park, and again, it's the whole thing of the Florida skies, and I'm really a big fan of anything that comes to our sunsets, and this is a sunset in Harambe, and what I like is what the reflection in the river with those the texture that brings with the plants and things like that. So I love this picture. I really love this one. I took from the.
It's hard to take a bad picture at Disney. That's what I.
Yes, you're right.
A little bit of effort goes a long way.
I mean, they kind of set the stage pretty well.
Yeah, so number 2 it's a classic Disneyland photo, and it framed up really nice. I mean, we caught a break in the crowds. I mean, we were all standing there, and for some reason, nobody walked in front of us for a few minutes. Could have been because I had a tripod out, but at the same time, it was something that I'd always wanted to have. It actually lives on my desktop most of the year. It's a simple photo, but it's kind of classic Disneyland in a very powerful way, in my opinion. And the clouds kind of had the perfect blur to still be clouds and not be kind of just moving objects. And this is probably one of the last nights Disneyland was open.
I'm ready for my number 1.
It's the time for your number 1.
Guess which park it's from.
Ooh.
My favorite park. So this was taken. This is in the bridge. Actually, I think it was taken from the bridge, if not just right next to the bridge between the African Trading Post and China.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's my favorite time of day in Epcot when you have that transition, just from day into night. And this was taken a couple of years ago, actually. So this, even though it was off of an iPhone, it would have been an older model iPhone. So even in that lighting situation, it did a nice job. And it just is so. I love this because it's just so peaceful and so well. I think it so well represents the feeling of Epcot, that moment. And Terry Stinson Doherty is going to know when I'm talking about that. The lead up to Illuminations at the time, to know that's coming.
Make
and
people cry.
Yeah, I just love it.
Let's go to my number 1, Collin. It is a picture that I also took with an iPhone, but it's my favorite.
Yeah, I can't knock an iPhone. They take a good photo on the right lighting.
Look at that.
Oh, it's the pink castle.
Yes, it is a 2-year-old.
And it's not the obnoxiously pink castle.
It is a 2-year-old.
Classic.
Is a 2-year-old picture or 3.
Oh.
And
Wow, it's crowded that day too. It must be right before the fireworks. The sunset would give that away though. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. So This is one of those photos that you never thought you'd
it's
get,
beautiful.
at least for me, because it takes a very unique series of situations to get it to the point where the land is wet enough for it to puddle this bad. So this was, I guess it was, gosh, it was probably last fall at this point, because it's been a while. It was a night, actually, I was down in Orlando for work, and I cut over to the park when we got done for the night, and it started pouring rain when I got there. Absolutely pouring. And it was so bad that at certain points when you walk through the Tomorrowland Speedway area that there was probably at least 8 inches of water standing. So it's kind of one of those things, you have to be there at the right place at the right time, and it's always been one of my favorite photos that I've ever been able to take.
But, buddy,
I love that.
do you want to mention one of the photos that you have here?
Yeah,
So
I've
just
got-
wait, just wait. Which
So
one?
I wanted to hold off on this one because, mostly because it's non-existent, and it goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. And it's Illuminations, and one of the very last showings. Jason was, I believe, this was the one. I have two variations of the shot. One of them was
This
what,
is the
3
one
days before.
I was actually live. I was doing a
Yeah.
Facebook Live.
We were both
in the
there. It was
steps.
when Jason was just getting into Facebook Live, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't believe me that this was going to be a good spot, but I knew I wanted to try this spot one last time before.
I had enough faith in you that I burned one of my very last illuminations.
That's true.
Going
One of
there,
his
so-
last illuminations goes was from here, but aren't you glad you did it now?
I am,
Because
yeah,
it's a
very
very unique spot, and a lot of, as you can tell, it wasn't a very crowded night, which shocked us both. And there were very few people in front of us down below, which is also rare. But I had to throw an illumination shot in here, and one of my favorite locations to view the show, and it'll always be a favorite photo of mine because of that. It actually lives. I've got two variations of it. There's one on the wall behind the screen that's in front of me and the camera, and there's one actually on another desk that's to the left of us, and both variations of it. So